It was a Friday night when I first noticed it. I was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, absent-mindedly checking emails and news. The light from the overhead lamp flickered as it had been for days now, but I hadn't bothered to get it fixed. I usually enjoyed the silence. At least, that's what I told myself. It was comfortable, familiar. But that night, something felt off. The house, which was usually filled with the sounds of her laughter, her voice, the occasional clink of dishes, was unnervingly still. I'd gotten used to her late-night habits, the way she would hum under her breath as she washed the dishes, or talk about her day like it was a soap opera, making everything dramatic and exaggerated. But tonight, not a word, not a sound. I glanced at the clock, 10:32 p.m. She should have been home by now. She'd told me she was meeting a friend for dinner, but it had been hours. I texted her, casually, as I usually would. "Hey, you on your way back?" I didn't expect a reply, not right away. She usually took her time. It was almost like a ritual, the disconnect before she came back to me. It had been like this for months. But tonight, as the minutes turned into half an hour and then an hour, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. When she still didn't reply, I stood up and paced the room. I checked the door, as if she might be standing there, somehow waiting for the right moment to walk in. The house felt enormous all of a sudden, like it was swallowing me up. My phone buzzed. "Sorry, I'm not coming back tonight. I need some space." I read those words over and over. It didn't make sense. Space. We'd been fine earlier that morning. I had kissed her goodbye, told her I'd miss her, like I always did. What could have changed between then and now? I stared at the message again, then stood frozen for a moment. Some space? I don't know why, but I felt the need to drive over to where she was, perhaps to make sense of things. To find out why the woman who had promised me forever was suddenly telling me she needed space. I didn't even bother to grab my jacket. I just hopped into the car and drove. It wasn't that far, just a small coffee shop where she sometimes met her friends. It was quiet, the kind of place you go when you want to be left alone. As I turned the corner, I saw her car parked outside, the headlights dimmed but the engine still running. She wasn't inside. Instead, I noticed two figures standing on the sidewalk. I couldn't see their faces at first, but one of them was laughing, their voice loud and carefree in the cool night air. The other was standing too still, too quiet. I parked across the street, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't move at first. I didn't even get out of the car. My mind raced. What if it was nothing? What if I'm overthinking this? But I couldn't help it. Something told me I had to look closer. I watched, hidden in the shadows, as Emma, my wife, the woman I had shared everything with, stepped into the arms of the other person. They embraced like they hadn't seen each other in years. The way she rested her head on their shoulder. I knew, and yet I didn't want to know. I felt like I was suffocating, the walls of the car closing in on me. I should have turned away. I should have left. But instead, I stayed there, frozen, unable to tear my eyes away from the scene unfolding in front of me. It wasn't just a casual hug. It wasn't a friendly hello or goodbye. It was something else. Something intimate. I felt the sting in my chest. I couldn't breathe. Eventually, they pulled apart. I don't know how long I had been watching them. I don't even know why I stayed, but I did. And then Emma turned, and she saw me. Her eyes widened in surprise, or maybe guilt. Hard to tell from the distance. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, the other person turned around. I saw their face then. It was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, dark hair, sharp jawline. I felt my stomach drop. Emma walked toward the car, her heels clicking against the pavement. But before she could reach the door, she paused. She looked back at him, and they exchanged a look, one that spoke volumes without a single word. I didn't wait for her to get to the car. I didn't even bother to open the door. I drove away. I didn't call her. I didn't text her. I just left. I couldn't face her. Not yet. Not after what I had seen. By the time I got home, I wasn't sure what I was feeling anymore. Betrayed? Yes. Angry? Definitely. Confused? That was an understatement. But more than anything, I felt empty. The woman I had married, the one I thought I knew, was now a stranger to me. And the worst part was, I wasn't sure if I ever really knew her at all. The next morning, she came home. The same way she always did, quiet, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you where I was," she said, standing in the doorway. "I just needed some time." I looked at her, my eyes cold. "Time for what?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked past me, as if nothing had changed. As if the night before, the man, the embrace, hadn't happened. I was drowning in the silence between us, but I didn't speak. I couldn't. I had no words. Not yet. And in that silence, something broke. Something inside of me that I didn't even know was there. It shattered into pieces I could never put back together. The silence between us stretched on, thick and suffocating. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. Every time I glanced in her direction, my mind replayed the image of her in the arms of that man, her smile genuine and carefree. It felt like a betrayal, like I was watching my entire life unravel in front of my eyes, and I had no control over it. For days, Emma acted like nothing had changed. She went about her routine, cooking dinner, answering emails, even laughing at the stupid jokes I made, like the night before hadn't happened, like I hadn't seen everything I needed to see. But I wasn't stupid. I knew what I had witnessed, and I knew she wasn't being honest with me. There was an air of discomfort about her, a tension that hung around us every time we spoke. It wasn't just her distance anymore, it was mine too. Something inside me had shifted, and I couldn't push it back. She had become a ghost in my own home, and the worst part was, I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring her back. Every time I tried to talk to her, to ask her what happened, she deflected. She'd give me some excuse about needing space, about how she was working through some personal issues. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, that I needed to give her the benefit of the doubt. But the truth gnawed at me like a slow poison. One evening, about a week after the incident, I was sitting in the living room when I heard her phone buzz on the kitchen counter. It was a random moment, just a quiet evening, the kind of evening we used to share before everything fell apart. But this time, I couldn't ignore it. I knew it wasn't just the same old notification. I knew something was wrong. I stood up, walking toward the counter. My heart raced in my chest, and I tried to ignore the voice in the back of my mind telling me not to invade her privacy. But I couldn't help myself. I grabbed her phone. The screen was still unlocked. I felt the weight of the decision in that moment, but I didn't stop. I opened her messages. The first message was from a name I didn't recognize. Can't stop thinking about last night. My breath caught in my throat. I quickly scrolled through the rest of the conversation, and my stomach dropped with every word. The flirtation was undeniable. The plans to meet up again. The way they spoke to each other, the intimacy in their words. It was a secret world that had been hidden from me. I had never been the type to snoop, but right then, I couldn't stop myself. And then I saw it. The message that shattered everything. I miss you. Can we talk about this? Can we meet up this weekend? I need to see you again. My hands were shaking, and my pulse hammered in my ears. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some one-time thing. This was an affair I had never seen coming, an affair that had been happening right under my nose. I put the phone down slowly, the weight of the realization crashing down on me. I wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there, but something held me back. Part of me wanted to confront the truth, but another part, the quieter, more broken part of me, wanted to bury it and pretend I hadn't seen it. I had no idea what was worse, knowing or living in ignorance. I heard the front door open, and Emma stepped inside, her heels clicking on the wooden floor. She paused when she saw me, standing still in the kitchen, the phone still in my hand. For a moment, we just stared at each other. There was no need to ask if I had seen the messages. I could tell from the way her face changed. It was like a mask had slipped, and for the first time in weeks, I saw the vulnerability behind her eyes. "You weren't supposed to see that," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't respond at first. I couldn't. I was frozen in place, struggling to process the words she had just said. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't apologizing for what she'd done. She was sorry I had found out. Why? I finally managed to choke out. "Why did you do this?" She looked away, her gaze darting to the floor. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't know what happened. I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened." I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing in the quiet kitchen. "You never meant for it to go this far? Is that really what you're going with?" She flinched at the harshness in my voice, but she didn't argue. She simply stood there, wringing her hands in front of her. "I felt like I was losing myself," she said, her voice trembling. "I was numb, Isaac. I didn't know who I was anymore. And then he came along, and for a moment, it felt like I was alive again. But I regret it. I regret it more than anything." I didn't know what to say to that. The words felt useless, hollow. She had betrayed me. She had betrayed us. And now she was standing there, telling me she regretted it, as if that was supposed to make everything okay. What are we supposed to do now? I asked, my voice cracking. How do we fix this? Can we fix this? Emma shook her head slowly. I don't know. I don't think we can. The finality in her words hit me harder than anything else. There was no going back. No fixing this. I had been holding on to the idea of her, of us, but in that moment, I realized that I was holding on to something that no longer existed. I don't want to hurt you, Isaac, she said softly, her eyes filling with tears. But I think I need to be on my own for a while. I need to figure things out. And just like that, the woman I had loved for years was asking for space. Not just emotional space, but physical space. I felt a crushing weight settle over me. I had no choice but to let her go. But even as I agreed, as I nodded my head in understanding, a part of me was already dying inside. The man I had been before was slipping away, and I wasn't sure I could find him again. As Emma packed her things over the next few days, I watched in silence. I couldn't bring myself to stop her. I didn't know how. She had already left me, in every sense of the word. The house grew colder with every box she packed, every item she removed. When she finally left, I stood in the doorway, watching her walk out of my life, the door closing behind her with a finality that I could feel in my bones. And that was the last time I saw her. I spent the next few days in a haze, trying to make sense of the mess that had become my life. I couldn't focus on anything. I didn't want to go to work, I didn't want to talk to friends, and I certainly didn't want to confront anyone about the truth that had been laid bare before me. I could barely even look at myself in the mirror without feeling disgusted. I had been so blind, so wrapped up in my own world, that I had failed to see the cracks in my marriage, the ones that were now so wide they couldn't be ignored. She was gone, and I was left standing in the ruins of everything we had built together. The silence in the house was unbearable, and yet, in some twisted way, it was the only thing that made sense. I needed the quiet to think, to process, but every time I tried to calm my mind, the thoughts would rush in like a tidal wave, drowning me. What had happened? Where had I gone wrong? Was I the one who had failed? Or was this all just something inevitable that I couldn't have prevented? The day after Emma left, I went through the motions, ate some cereal, scrolled through emails, even tried to clean up the house a little, though I could barely bring myself to care. I was on autopilot, barely existing. But then, on the third day, it happened. A message from her. It wasn't what I had expected. No apology. No explanation. Just a simple sentence that made my stomach twist with confusion. I need to talk to you. My heart skipped a beat. Was she coming back? Was this her attempt to reconcile? I almost didn't want to open the message, afraid of what it might say, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to know. I'm meeting someone tonight. I'm sorry. I stared at the message, reading it over and over again. She was meeting someone. My mind raced, but the words hit harder than any punch could. Meeting someone. It was as if the world had flipped upside down, and now I was the one being left behind. For the first time, I could see the cold truth. Emma was already moving on. She didn't need me anymore. I couldn't bring myself to reply. What was there to say? What could I say? My world had shattered, and all I was left with was the echo of her words, her absence, and the bitter sting of betrayal. I wanted to reach out to her, to ask her why, to demand answers, but I knew deep down that it wouldn't make a difference. She had made her choice. She had made it clear that she didn't want me, not in the way I wanted her. As the evening wore on, I sat in the dark, staring at the walls of our once shared home, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The thought of her with someone else twisted my insides. Who was he? What did he have that I didn't? Was I that easy to replace? The questions gnawed at me, but I didn't have any answers. All I knew was that she was no longer mine. The next few days were a blur. I tried to occupy myself with work, with anything that could distract me from the pain that was threatening to consume me. But the thought of her, of what she was doing, what she had become, lingered like a shadow. She had left, and in doing so, had taken a part of me with her. I couldn't help but remember the man she had been with the night I saw them outside the coffee shop. I didn't know who he was, but I couldn't shake the image of them together, the intimacy they shared. How long had this been going on? Had she been seeing him while we were still together? Had it all been a lie? The questions ate at me, but I had no answers. She wasn't talking to me anymore, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I thought about going to see her, about confronting her with what I had seen. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. She had already made her decision. The relationship we had was over, and nothing I could say or do would change that. The person I had loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't even recognize. But I couldn't let it go. I couldn't just accept it. Not yet. I had to know the truth. I had to understand what had happened. So, one night, I did something I swore I would never do. I drove to her apartment. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just went. Part of me knew it was a terrible idea, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to see her. I had to hear it from her. I parked a block away from her place and walked the rest of the way, my heart pounding in my chest. As I neared her building, I saw her car parked outside. The lights in her apartment were on, but she wasn't at the window. I hesitated for a moment, standing there, torn between what I needed and what I knew I shouldn't do. But then I heard it. The sound of laughter. It was her voice. And there was someone else with her. A man's voice. I froze. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I wanted to run, to turn around and leave, but I couldn't. I stayed there, hidden in the shadows, watching the scene unfold through the window. I saw them sitting close, sharing a bottle of wine, talking, laughing. The way she looked at him, there was a warmth in her eyes that I hadn't seen in months. A warmth I had thought was reserved for me. The man reached over and touched her hand, and for a moment, she didn't pull away. I couldn't breathe. The weight of it all was too much. She had moved on. She was with someone else now. And I was standing there, watching her live a life that wasn't mine. I should have walked away then. I should have left her to it. But I didn't. I waited, watching them for what felt like an eternity. And then, at the height of my frustration, I saw her kiss him. It was quick, fleeting, but it was enough. Enough to break me. That was the moment I knew. There was no coming back from this. She had left me behind, and I had no place in her life anymore. I turned and walked away, my heart heavy with the weight of the truth. But as I walked back to my car, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to be the victim here. I wasn't going to be the one left in the dark, drowning in my own despair. No, I was going to take control. I didn't know what that looked like yet, but I was done being broken. As I drove away from her apartment, a new feeling washed over me. Anger. But it wasn't just anger at her. It was anger at myself for letting this happen, for letting her slip through my fingers. I had been a fool, but I wouldn't be anymore. I woke up the next morning feeling like a different person, as though the man I was yesterday had been replaced by someone more hardened, someone capable of moving on, of standing tall in the face of what had become of my life. The events of the previous night, the laughter, the kiss, her easy affection toward him, had ripped away the last shred of illusion I had clung to. I had tried to convince myself that there was a chance, some hope that we could make things work. But that was over. She was gone, and she wasn't coming back. The woman I had loved, the woman who had promised me forever, had already made her choice. And it wasn't me. But the strangest thing happened as I drove away from her apartment that night. I felt an odd sense of clarity. Maybe it was the anger that had been building inside of me, or the way my heart felt as though it had been shattered beyond repair, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep living in this state of limbo, stuck between wanting her back and wanting to escape the pain. I couldn't keep obsessing over the past, over the woman who no longer wanted me. I drove home that night with a new sense of purpose, a decision forming in my mind. I needed to make a change. I needed to take control, not just of my life, but of my future. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I wasn't going to let her actions dictate my happiness. The next morning, I woke up with a resolve I hadn't felt in months. I could feel the weight of the house around me, its empty spaces echoing the loneliness I had been carrying for so long. But today, I wasn't going to let it crush me. I was going to do something for myself. I wasn't sure what that something was yet, but I knew I had to start somewhere. I texted her that morning, a short, simple message. We need to talk. I can't keep doing this. Meet me at the coffee shop we used to go to. She replied quickly, as if she'd been waiting for it. Okay, I'll be there in an hour. I didn't know what I was going to say when I saw her. I had no plan, no script to follow. But I knew one thing. This would be the last time I would give her the power to control my emotions. I couldn't keep dancing around this. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know what had happened. I needed closure. I needed to be free. When I arrived at the coffee shop, I saw her sitting by the window, a cup of coffee in front of her, her eyes downcast. She looked exactly the same, but something about her was different now. It was like I was looking at a stranger, someone I didn't recognize, someone I no longer cared to know. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before I walked in. As I approached the table, she looked up, her face softening. But there was no warmth in her gaze, no familiarity, just a faint hint of regret. And guilt, maybe. I wasn't sure anymore. I didn't know what to say, she began, her voice faltering slightly. I didn't know how to fix it. You can't fix this, I said, cutting her off before she could continue. You broke something, Emma, and I don't think it can be fixed. Her face tightened, her lips pressing together. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. No, I said, shaking my head. You didn't want to hurt yourself. You didn't want to deal with your own issues, and so you ran away from them. You ran into someone else's arms. And now here we are. She opened her mouth to argue, but I stopped her. No, Emma, I said more softly this time. I'm not angry anymore. I was so angry. But what I realize now is that I've been holding on to something that you let go of a long time ago. I've been holding on to the idea of us, of what we were. But you've moved on, and it's time I do the same. She looked at me, her expression flickering with something, pain, realization. I couldn't tell, but for the first time in weeks, I saw something different in her. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the faintest trace of remorse. I'm sorry, Isaac, she whispered. I never meant for it to go this far. But I didn't believe her. Not anymore. I'm sorry too, I replied, but this is over. It's been over for a while now. We sat there in silence for a long moment, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air between us. I could feel the walls closing in on me, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't going to back down. I had made my decision, and this was the moment. I think it's time for us to say goodbye, I said quietly, my voice steady. For good this time. She didn't say anything. She just nodded, her eyes filling with tears she didn't bother to wipe away. And I knew, in that moment, that everything had changed. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't sad either. I was done. I had let go. I stood up to leave, but before I could walk away, she reached for my hand, her fingers brushing against mine. For a second, I hesitated. I almost took her hand, but I pulled away, feeling the finality of the gesture. I hope you find what you're looking for, Emma, I said. But it's not going to be with me. She didn't reply. She just sat there, watching me as I walked away, the space between us growing wider with every step I took. And for the first time in months, I felt free. I didn't look back. The days following my meeting with Emma were a blur. I didn't know what to do with myself. There were moments when I felt an unsettling calm, a quiet that I hadn't felt in years. And then there were moments when the pain resurfaced, sharper than before, cutting through the numbness I had tried to build around myself. I spent most of my time at work, where I buried my head in the tasks I had been avoiding for months. I focused on the small things, answering emails, organizing my desk, making to-do lists that had no real purpose. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the thought that I was living in someone else's life. I found myself back at the coffee shop a few days later. It wasn't planned. I hadn't intended to go there, but something pulled me to it, like a magnetic force I couldn't resist. I walked in slowly, my heart still in my throat, wondering if it would feel different. If the place that had once been a symbol of everything good between us would still carry that warmth, that comfort. I grabbed a cup of coffee, just black, nothing special, and sat at a table in the corner, trying not to let my mind wander too far into the past. But it always did. My mind was a maze of old memories, of moments shared in this very spot. I could almost hear her laughter in the background, see the way she'd smile when she looked at me, the way she'd joke about how I could never get the order right. It felt suffocating. The ghosts of our past were all around me, and I couldn't outrun them. The bell over the door rang, and my heart skipped. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. I could feel her presence the moment she entered the room, as if the air itself shifted when she walked in. Emma. She wasn't supposed to be here, not in this moment, not in my space. I had told myself that I was done with her, that I could never look at her the same way again. But seeing her, hearing the soft sound of her footsteps as she approached the counter, it all came rushing back. She walked past my table, hesitating for a moment as if she was debating whether or not to say something. I held my breath, but I didn't look up. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. I wasn't going to let her take me back into the cycle of hope and disappointment. But then, to my surprise, she sat down across from me. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My mind was a jumble of conflicting emotions: anger, regret, confusion, even a flicker of longing. It was easier to stay silent than to try to make sense of all the feelings I was battling. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she said after a few moments, her voice soft, almost fragile. "But I needed to see you." I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure I could trust my voice. After everything, after all the lies, after watching her walk out of my life and into someone else's arms, I didn't know if I could bear hearing her speak again, let alone face her. "You don't need to explain anything to me, Emma," I finally said, my voice calm but firm. "You made your choice. I made mine. There's nothing left to say." She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "No, Isaac. There's a lot more to say. Please, just hear me out. Please." She was desperate now, and it made me angry. It wasn't fair for her to come here, to sit across from me, asking for my understanding, asking for my forgiveness when she had already made it clear that she didn't deserve it. "I don't know if I can hear you out, Emma," I said, my voice low. "Not anymore. You made your decision. You left, and then you moved on. What do you expect me to do with that?" She looked away for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts, trying to find the right words. "I don't expect anything," she said softly. "I just wanted to apologize. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't think it would go this far, and I was wrong. I know I hurt you. I know I broke us." I closed my eyes briefly, trying to keep my composure. I wasn't sure why I was still sitting there, still listening to her. But a part of me, an old, broken part of me, still wanted to believe that there was something worth saving, even if I knew deep down that I was just fooling myself. "But that doesn't change anything, does it?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "You've already done the damage, Emma. You've already broken everything we had, and I'm not sure I can ever look at you the same way again." She nodded, tears now streaming down her face. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I can't fix this, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. From the bottom of my heart, I am so sorry for everything I put you through. I never wanted to hurt you." I swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in my throat, but I pushed it down. I wasn't going to let her break me again. "I know you're sorry, Emma," I said quietly, "but sorry isn't enough. It never was." For a long time, we sat there in silence, neither of us knowing what to say. The weight of the moment was unbearable, and I could feel the years of memories crashing down on me. The laughter, the love, the promises we made to each other, all of it felt like a distant dream now, something that didn't belong to me anymore. Finally, I stood up, pushing my chair back with a sharp screech. "I think it's time you go, Emma," I said, my voice steady, even though everything inside of me was shaking. "I think it's time we both move on." She stood up too, looking at me one last time, her face a mask of regret. "Goodbye, Isaac," she said softly. "I hope you find peace." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I watched as she walked out of the coffee shop, her figure slowly disappearing from my sight. And in that moment, something shifted inside of me. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't sadness. It was finality. I had let her go, and this time, I wasn't going to look back. As the door closed behind her, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It was over, and I was going to be okay. The days after Emma left the coffee shop felt different. Not better, not immediately, but different. There was a weight that lifted from my chest, a strange and unexpected freedom that came with knowing that I had made the right choice, that I had finally stopped holding on to something that was never going to return. It was like waking up from a long, painful dream, disorienting at first, but ultimately, the only way to survive. But despite this newfound clarity, the days didn't feel like they belonged to me. I found myself lost, wandering through a life that felt unfamiliar. The house, once filled with laughter and the comfort of Emma's presence, now felt like a foreign space. The walls seemed to close in on me, and the silence was deafening. I had hoped that letting go would bring peace, but instead, I found myself grappling with the aftermath of everything we had been through. I threw myself into work, using it as a distraction. I'd show up early, leave late, and focus on nothing but the tasks at hand. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the reality that was unfolding around me. Every quiet moment brought the memories of Emma rushing back. Her laugh, her touch, the way she used to look at me like I was the only person in the room. It was one evening, as I sat alone in my office, mindlessly scrolling through emails, that I received a message. The name on the screen made my stomach churn. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but I knew instantly who it was. Isaac, we need to talk. I know I don't have the right to ask for your time, but I need to explain. Please. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity, my pulse quickening. After everything, after the way I had walked away from her at the coffee shop, how could she have the nerve to reach out again? My first instinct was to ignore it, to block the number and move on. But something stopped me. Was it curiosity? Was it unfinished business? Was it the part of me that had never truly let go? I didn't know, but I found myself typing a response. What could we possibly have left to talk about? Her reply came quickly, as if she had been waiting for my response. I understand if you don't want to see me, but I'm asking for one last chance to explain myself. Please, Isaac. Just one last time. I hesitated. Every fiber of my being told me to walk away, to never engage with her again. But the part of me that had spent years with her, that had loved her fiercely, wouldn't let go. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she needed to say, something I needed to hear to finally put this chapter of my life to rest. I agreed to meet her again, against every instinct I had. We arranged to meet at a small park, a place neither of us had been in years. It was quiet there, peaceful, with just the rustling of leaves and the distant sound of birdsong breaking the silence. When I arrived, I saw her sitting on a bench, looking small and lost, as though she didn't belong in the world she was in now. She was no longer the confident woman I had once known. Her shoulders were slumped, her face weary. I sat down beside her, but we didn't speak for a long time. It was like we were both waiting for something. Some kind of permission to let go of the past, to confront the truth. I'm sorry for what I did, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't take it back, Isaac. I know I can't, but I need you to understand that I never intended to hurt you. When it happened, it was never about not loving you. I didn't know what I was doing. I was lost, and I sought something that I thought I needed. I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. I wanted to yell at her, to tell her everything I had been feeling since the day I caught her with another man. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just listened. I was selfish, she continued, her voice trembling. I ran away from what was real because I was scared. I thought I needed space. I thought I needed freedom. But all I've felt since walking away from you is emptiness. I've realized that I was never meant to be without you. And now, I can't undo the damage I've caused, but I need you to know that I regret it every single day. There it was. The words I had wanted to hear, the apology I had thought would give me closure. But it didn't. It wasn't enough. Because, in truth, I had already let go. Her apology was just words now, echoes of a past I couldn't reclaim. Why now? I finally asked, my voice rough. Why come to me now? After everything that's happened, after you've already moved on? She sighed, her eyes searching the ground beneath us. I don't have a good answer for that, she admitted. I couldn't live with the guilt anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that you were the one who was wrong. I hurt you, Isaac. I hurt you in a way that no apology will fix. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. The words hit me harder than I expected. They were just words, nothing more. But the truth behind them, that we were both lost in different ways, both trying to find something we couldn't see, made my heart ache. The woman I had once known was still there, somewhere deep inside, but she was no longer the person I needed her to be. I stood up, my mind made up. I think you need to go, Emma, I said quietly. I've heard you. I've listened. But I can't keep doing this. I can't keep living in the past, hoping for something that isn't coming. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw the depth of her sadness. I'm sorry, she whispered again. I know it's too late, but I had to say it. I nodded, the lump in my throat finally breaking free. Goodbye, Emma. And with that, I walked away. This time, I didn't look back. As I left the park, a strange sense of peace washed over me. I had given her everything I could. I had listened. I had understood. But the truth was, I had already made my peace. I was done. There was nothing left to say. It's funny how everything can change in the span of a single moment. How one conversation can tear down the walls you've spent years building, only to leave you standing in the rubble, wondering if the person you thought you were even exists anymore. After walking away from Emma at the park, I thought I would feel better. I thought I would feel a sense of relief, that I would be able to breathe again. But as I walked away, the weight of her words echoed in my mind. I never stopped loving you. I had told myself that I was done, that I was walking away for good. But those words, they were like a knife twisting in my gut. No matter how hard I tried to push them away, they kept coming back, repeating over and over in my mind. And the truth is, I wasn't sure if I was as done as I wanted to be. The days after that meeting with Emma were both long and short, time losing its meaning. I went to work as usual, pretending to focus on my tasks, but my mind was somewhere else. It always was. The office was just a backdrop, a blur of meetings and phone calls that meant little to me now. Every quiet moment, every time I looked up from my computer, Emma's face would flash in my mind. I couldn't escape her. I tried to fill the silence with distractions, going to the gym, hanging out with friends, even getting involved in a new project at work, but nothing seemed to work. Everything reminded me of her. Every song on the radio, every corner of the city we used to walk together, every quiet evening I spent alone in our house. It was all tainted by memories of the woman I once loved, the woman who had walked away from me, leaving me to pick up the pieces. And then, as if on cue, she reached out again. This time, it wasn't a simple text or a brief message. It was a letter that was left on my doorstep late one evening, wrapped in a simple envelope with my name written in the familiar handwriting I had once adored. My heart sank when I saw it, and for a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the envelope, unsure of what to do. The letter was a final attempt, I realized. A way for her to say everything she hadn't been able to say before, a way to tie up loose ends that had been left hanging for too long. I waited until the next morning to open it. My hands were shaking as I tore open the envelope, not knowing what to expect, but knowing, deep down, that this was the last time I would ever hear from her. The letter was simple, but it was filled with raw honesty. Isaac, I don't know how to make this right. I don't know if I can, but I need you to know that leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done. I hurt you, and I can't take that back. But I want you to know that I have always cared for you. I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't think we can go back to what we had, but I hope one day you'll understand that I was lost. I was running from my own demons, and in doing so, I hurt you in ways I can never fix. But you deserve happiness, and I hope you find it. I hope you find someone who will love you the way I couldn't. I'll never forget you, Isaac. You'll always have a piece of my heart, no matter where life takes us. I sat there for what felt like hours, the letter clenched in my hands, my eyes stinging with the unshed tears I hadn't allowed myself to cry. It was over. She was gone, but in some strange, inexplicable way, she was still here, in the words she had left behind. I could feel her presence, her pain, her regret, all swirling around me. The thing was, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to process the mixture of emotions her letter stirred up inside of me. Part of me wanted to hold on to it, to cling to the words she had written, to believe that there was still something worth salvaging from the wreckage of our relationship. But another part of me, stronger now, more resolute, knew that I had to let go. The past was gone, and no matter how much I wished it weren't true, we could never go back to the way we were. I burned the letter later that day. It wasn't out of anger, but out of necessity. I had to destroy the last piece of her I had left, to truly close the door and walk away. As the flames consumed the paper, I felt a strange sense of finality. It was as if I was burying the past, burying her, and with it, the part of me that had spent too long holding on to something that was never meant to be. The next few days were quiet. I didn't hear from Emma again. No texts, no letters, no sudden appearances. And for the first time in months, I felt something that resembled peace. The world around me didn't feel so heavy. The house, once filled with ghosts, now felt empty, but in a way that allowed me to breathe. I wasn't suffocating anymore. I still had moments where I missed her, where I missed the life we had built together, the dreams we had shared, the small moments that had once made everything feel so right. But I also knew something important. I had to move on. I couldn't keep holding on to a version of her that no longer existed. I couldn't keep living in the shadows of the past. One evening, as I sat on the couch, flipping through an old photo album, I came across a picture of us from a vacation we had taken years ago. We were laughing, carefree, smiling like we had all the time in the world. For a fleeting moment, I felt the weight of what we had lost, but then something inside of me shifted. The sadness that had once overwhelmed me was gone. It had been replaced by a quiet strength, a knowing that I was no longer defined by what Emma had taken from me, but by what I still had within myself. I closed the photo album, And for the first time, I didn't feel like a part of me was missing. I was whole again. I was free. And as the days passed, I knew that the hardest part was over. The storm had passed. I had weathered it. And now, for the first time in a long time, I was ready to embrace the calm. Months had passed since the final chapter with Emma, and though the journey had been anything but easy, I had come out the other side. The first few weeks had been the hardest. There were nights when I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind running through every moment we had shared, every word she had said. I had wrestled with regret, with anger, and with sadness. But time, as it always does, had softened the edges. Slowly, I began to find peace in the silence that had once felt like an enemy. I started to rebuild, not just my life, but myself. I took up new hobbies, things I'd always pushed aside for the sake of the relationship. I joined a hiking group, rediscovered my love for photography, and even took a cooking class. At first, they were distractions, ways to keep my mind off the past, but soon enough, I realized they were giving me more than just a way to pass the time. They were showing me parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. And then one day, I woke up and realized something that felt like a revelation. I was happy, not in some fleeting, surface-level way, but deep down. I wasn't holding on to the past anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone to fill the void. The void had filled itself, in its own time, with something unexpected: contentment. I'd gone through the pain. I'd walked through fire. And now, I was standing on the other side, stronger, clearer, and more aware of who I was than I had ever been. It was on one of those Saturdays, the kind of day that felt like it had been made for new beginnings, that I met her. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't trying to replace Emma or recreate what I had lost. I had already made peace with that part of my life. But when she smiled at me from across the coffee shop, something shifted. She wasn't like Emma. She didn't remind me of the past. There was no baggage, no heavy history weighing us down. Just a simple, honest connection. Her name was Lily. We started talking about books, something I hadn't expected to bond over. But there we were, chatting about our favorite authors, exchanging recommendations like we were old friends. It felt so natural, so easy, and for the first time in a long time, I realized how much I had missed real connection, how much I had missed the simple joy of conversation without any history attached to it. We went on our first date the following week, and then another, and another. Each one was better than the last. With Lily, it wasn't about healing from the past. It was about discovering something new, something untainted and fresh. She didn't carry the weight of old wounds, and neither did I. We both understood what it was like to be hurt, to be broken, but more importantly, we understood what it was like to heal. We took our time, not rushing into anything, just enjoying each other's company. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, I found myself falling for her. Slowly, gently, not in the way I had fallen for Emma, with all-consuming passion, but with a quiet certainty, a deep knowing that this was something real, something lasting. One evening, after a long day at work, I found myself thinking about everything I had been through. I had lost something beautiful, yes, but I had also gained something invaluable: strength, clarity, and a sense of self that had been lost in the chaos. And now, with Lily, I realized I had gained something else: the possibility of a future that wasn't defined by the mistakes of the past. As we sat on the balcony of my apartment one night, sipping wine and watching the sunset, Lily turned to me, her eyes soft and warm. "I'm glad we met, Isaac," she said, her voice low and sincere. "I think I was waiting for someone like you." I smiled, feeling the weight of everything I had been through finally ease off my shoulders. "Me too," I said. "I didn't know it at the time, but I think I was waiting for you too." And in that moment, I realized that life had a way of surprising you, of showing you that even after the worst heartbreak, something beautiful can come from it. The pain had changed me. It had reshaped me into someone new. But it hadn't broken me. It had taught me what I needed to learn to be whole again. I didn't need Emma to find happiness. I didn't need to fix the past. I only needed to keep moving forward, one step at a time, knowing that the best chapters of my story were still ahead of me. Lily and I continued to build our own story, free from the shadows of the past, embracing the future with open hearts. The pain of losing Emma had faded into a distant memory, a lesson learned. And I had learned it well. Sometimes, the most beautiful things come from the places we least expect. And for the first time in a long time, I knew that everything was exactly as it was meant to be.